Welcome, everybody. It's really exciting to be here today. I'm talking with Emma Livingstone from the UK, and we're going to be talking about our Global Professional Education Committee listening and sharing session for 2025. This will be happening on the 7th of November, and our topic for this year is moving into adulthood, finding and navigating support pathways. And this will be brought to you by the IAACD. So, Emma, I'd love you to introduce yourself and tell us what your interest in this area is, please.
Hi, thank you. My name is Emma Livingstone, and I live in London in the UK. I am a speech and language therapist by background, but I am a CEO of a non-for-profit organisation here in the UK, Up the Adult Cerebral Palsy Movement. And I founded the charity with my colleague, who is a neurophysio, back 8 years ago. I'm someone who also lives with cerebral palsy, and as I moved into my adulthood, I found that cerebral palsy for me was changing, and there was very little knowledge and support about how to support me best into adulthood. We founded a charity because we understood that the community was isolated. They had very little understanding of their own condition and how to help themselves. We had a clinical community that wasn't sure how to support adults living with cerebral palsy, or even that they should be supporting adults with cerebral palsy. And furthermore, we didn't have any services and support for people living with cerebral palsy post 18 here in the UK. In fact, up until late last year, the NHS here still defined cerebral palsy as a childhood condition. Thankfully, that's changed, but we're now advocating for better services and support, and seeing cerebral palsy as a lifelong condition.
Awesome. And can you tell me in your organisation the age range of people and how many people you've got that are working and supporting the charity and those sorts of things?
Okay, so we're a very small charity, and I run it as a CEO, and my colleague Miriam Krieger is clinical lead. We now have a full-time community support manager, and the rest of the time we support the 130,000 adults across the UK with ourselves and with other volunteers. And that's the 130,000 adults. So those are those people post 18. However, as we perhaps go on to talk about, supporting people well into their adulthood means giving them a positive paediatric experience too. So we really start supporting people from the age of 14 when we begin to think about that transition into adulthood.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. And I really love that you're considering earlier is better from experience. So yeah, that's really important. So for our listening and sharing sessions, we have countries throughout the world that offer to host sessions, which is really wonderful. If we were going to talk to some of those hosts, or they were listening to this, what would you like them to know about moving into adulthood, and what sort of topics they could think about presenting or talking on or sharing with their listeners and the people that are coming to their sessions?
I think the best way for me to answer that question is really to talk through some principles that I think covers that process that we believe takes place and starts to begin thinking about that transition into adulthood from the age of around 14. And in fact, that's what the research is telling us. So in terms of principles, I would say, first of all, we need to think about that process, the process of children and young people moving from the passenger, really, of their lives, so being well supported by friends, family, and their peer groups and their supports, through the process of co-piloting in their adolescence to somebody who is actually the pilot of their life. That's how we see that process of transition. And during that process of transition, what we found is that we need to better prepare our children and our families for adulthood. I spent many years in rooms where paediatric teams would be saying that, there isn't anything for children when they reach 18, and really they're left high and dry, and that's a really sad situation to be in, and it is. And I sat in rooms with adult teams that said, oh, in childhood people are mollycoddles, they're very well supported, and they need something different when they get into adulthood. I also agree that people need something different when they get into adulthood. But we were trying as an organisation to see, well, what needs to happen in childhood that means that they're going to be more successful as adults. And we used research, and we used lived experience, and we used all the new knowledge and information that we have about what happens to people as they get older living with cerebral palsy. So the next thing I think people need to think about is what skills and what information and what habits do we need to think about, and what belief systems do we need to think about to help better prepare our children for adulthood. And here at UP, we have created a metaphorical backpack of information, support, skills, and beliefs that we want to put into that backpack, as well as giving them opportunities to meet older people and learning from their experiences. So it would be about better preparing our children for adulthood, teaching them specific skills that they might need. So those of advocacy, independence, and self-help and decision-making skills that I think perhaps if you have a child who has additional needs, those opportunities aren't readily available for them. So what kind of opportunities can we create for our young people to develop those skills? But it really isn't just about what happens in childhood. This needs to be thought about across the lifespan. So it's about then what services and support do people need when they move into adulthood. We've worked very closely with the NHS, because it's a universal system here, about what services and support people really do need to manage their health and their independence as they get older. And to understand what the consequences of aging with cerebral palsy are, those of decreasing function, of ability, of their mobility perhaps declining, as well as the risk factors for non-communicable disease and the high incidence of anxiety and depression that we see within our community. And that many of our community want to work, want to stay active members of society and participate fully in whatever that looks like for them. How do we support our young people and our adults through universities, if that's where they choose, into adulthood, if that's the workplace, if that's where they choose to be, on how do we get them fully participating in their lives, and what support system needs to be in place in order for that to happen. It might seem that I'm talking very medically, but I think that if we have better support for our health and our well-being, so broader than just our health, but our well-being, then we are better able to function. And when I talk about well-being, I include in that relationships, friendships, hobbies, skills, and all of the wider well-being that we need to consider for our young people and adults. So what does that look like as you get into adulthood? And lastly, I would say that at least in this country, we think of transition as a specific point in time, that of between 18 when you leave paediatric services and you moved into adulthood. But really, if we think about the lifespan, there are lots of transition points across that lifespan, whether that be leaving primary school to secondary school, from secondary school to university, university into the workplace, perhaps, deciding that you want to become a parent, later on down the line, deciding perhaps that you're going into retirement, or that you are now living on your own, perhaps because of bereavement, as well as those transition points if you need to have surgery or further intervention as you get older. They are all transition points across the lifespan, and we need to think very specifically about what the needs of people are across those transition points. And lastly, I would say if we're going to learn about how we best support adults in adulthood with cerebral palsy, then the best people to learn from are those people who have gone through it previously, those role models. So how can we ensure that people with cerebral palsy are meeting other people with cerebral palsy to learn from? And what are they telling us about how they need support? Well, what they're telling us is we need support in how to save energy, how to increase and keep our function, how to support our participation, and how to manage our pain as we get older. And those are things that think we need to discuss more widely in terms of, well, what does that mean and what therapeutic support and what wider support do individuals need in order to do that.
Amazing. Thank you. That is so good. So many ideas there and so many aspects that people might take on board. And I personally really love the idea of the passenger and the co-pilot and the pilot, just thinking about that autonomy and taking control. I think that's just such a lovely analogy and for people to think about, because I think that could be used for anybody, moving through any transition stage. So I really love that. So thank you so much, Emma, for your time. We're really excited that you've been able to share your thoughts today, and hopefully you'll be able to come to some of the sessions and contribute as part of a listener and a sharer as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I just as recognition, what we do at UP is work very closely with the research community. So that idea of passenger to pilot of your life came from a really wonderful team of researchers, Professor Jenny Ryan and Dr. Jennifer Fortune. So I can't take credit for their ideas, but they are very, very willing to enable us to use that to share those ideas. So we will give them credit for that.
Oh, thank you. And you'll be pleased to know that Dr. Jennifer Fortune has agreed to run a session for us on this listening and sharing. So that's all good news. So we'll hear more about that. So thank you. That's awesome.